good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jonathan Knight, or I go by JK. I'm Acella's Chief Customer Officer. And joining me today is Jim White, who is our Vice President of SaaS Migrations, and Tracy Gutheim, who is the Deputy Director of Operations at Pima County, Arizona. I'll let them introduce themselves in a minute here. So this morning, we're going to go over the work that Accella has done to try to make your migration from on-premise to the cloud easy and simple for you. How prepared you need to be, what are some of the benefits, cost, and then we'll have plenty of time for Q&A. If you have questions that you want to type in, please use the Q&A button at the on the toolbar, not the chat button. We tend to lose track of the chat, so the Q&A would be terrific. And with that, Jim, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, JK. I'm Jim White, Vice President of SaaS Migration at Accella. Been part of Accella Professional Services for over a decade now. And in my current role, I'm strictly focused on helping customers move from on-premise into the cloud.
That's great. And Tracy, if you could introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Tracy Gutheim. I'm the Operations Manager for Pima County Development Services. We are fairly large by land area county in Arizona, and we run Accella.
I lived very close to there for a number of years after I got out of college, so it was a great location. It's certainly grown in the last couple decades too, tremendously.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, let's go back to the slides here, and so you know, as we think about upgrading and migrating to SaaS, we'd like to start this morning with a poll to kind of get your feedback and ask some questions. So first question is, what is most intriguing about going to the cloud? And you can check what applies to you. We'll give this a minute. Everybody can click on their poll answers here. Interesting, no major updates is neck and neck with improved performance and user interfaces. No more updates is pulling ahead. That is definitely a popular one. We hear that from a number of folks that have migrated. They say one of the great benefits is that they don't have to go through any more Accella upgrades, which are always quite fun. All right, cool. Well, thank you for your feedback. Let's go to question number 2. Let's see. How are we going to question number 2? What are the biggest barriers to upgrading that you see to migrating to the cloud? So check what applies to you, and gives us a good bellwether of what you're thinking and what some of your challenges are. This has been helpful in the past, and sometimes a lot of the questions in the Q&A session reflected the answers to this poll. Let's see. Control of data, cost. My data processes aren't ready for migration. Pretty even splitting across it. Lack of resources. Yep. Other. All right, interesting. I think that is also consistent with most of the other polls that we have done in the past on this. So we will definitely make sure that we address those items: resources, data, and cost, and being ready to do it. Cool. All right. Let's end the poll and jump right in. So to start us off, I was wondering if Tracy, if you could tell us about your migration process and why Pima County decided to upgrade to the SaaS environment.
Sure, absolutely. I've been involved with our Accella project since back in the Permits Plus days. So I was the Permits Plus administrator before we went to Accella. Before migrating to to SaaS, we actually had a really customized solution. We have Excella used in more than 10 county departments. So it's truly an enterprise solution. And when we went live with our initial on-prem solution in July 2015, and we'd only managed one upgrade since then. It was incredibly painful. Several of you just mentioned that no more upgrades was a popular thing. Our one upgrade was a nightmare. We went from 7.3 to 9.2. And I think we're still recovering from the trauma of that. So by late 2019, we were several versions out of date. We were still on 9.2. And we had a tough decision. We had to decide, do we transition to SaaS? Do we stay on-prem and try to do another upgrade? Or do we have to go to a completely different platform? Do nothing was no longer an option, because the longer we waited, the further behind we were going to be in advancing some of our strategic priorities. When we went to 9.2, Construct API was not configured as part of that. So everything we had in all our integrations were still in GovXML. And that was a huge barrier for us to be able to do anything new. Obviously,
Right,
there were a lot of pros and cons. And you guys just, that question that went over it, those were our pros and cons with it. Being hosted would allow us to stay current. That was a great thing. Maybe refocus our resources on enhancing our system instead of spending the time doing the upgrades, and then to be able to partner with other vendors to enhance it. But we were also really concerned about losing control. We were concerned about cost, and then, timely access to our data was a huge concern for us. We also were still in a position where we were paying off our initial implementation still. We're an enterprise fund. We borrowed money to do our 2015 implementation. So we didn't have the budget for another big job. And luckily for us, Excella came back and worked with us in a way that it wasn't going to be a huge cost barrier to migrate.
That's great. I mean, and a lot of the challenges and the concerns that you guys had about migrating, very common. We hear that from everybody. Dennis Chase asked, how customized is Pima County scripting? And could you give some examples? And were there any scripting processes that could not be made with the migration to the cloud environment?
We are highly customized. I was going back through, we had over, Jim's smiling. I was looking back at our notes. We had over 30,000 lines of custom code. We have 80 record types. And we also have a very sophisticated inspector routing program, APO update. We connect to our financial system. So we were not out of the box. We also have custom solutions that take our conditions and will flow them down from our comprehensive plan or our rezonings all the way down to land and apply on a building permit. So we made it complicated.
Now, was all of that migrated? Then that all of that followed into the SaaS environment? I
don't think a few things work a little different, but I don't think we lost anything.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, no, I remember Pima, the implementation and post-implementation. It was a challenging. It was a big project. That was a massive project. That's great. That's great. Well, thank you for sharing your story. So Jim, if I could ask you to go into, picking up on that theme, what we talk a lot about, and I know that you spend a lot of times with clients about it, is that migration process. We've tried to make it really easy for clients to do. And so if you could take us through how we've made that easier than folks may think.
Right. Yeah, we've structured the migration program in a way where we really try to do as much of the heavy lifting and kind of bear the burden as much as we can as we go through the process. So we're going to start the project basically getting a database backup of your current system, bringing that into the SaaS environment, making sure that there's no data issues or database structural issues, and pulling that data into the SaaS environment, getting it loaded up, getting the tenants provisioned in the SaaS environments. We've got some internal testing and QA that we do along the way to make sure that everything's importing cleanly, that the environment's good, that we don't have any issues there. And test of all the basic system functionality, authentication, search, creating records, etc. From the customer's perspective early on, primarily they're just providing the inputs, the database backups, report files, things of that nature. Occasionally we may need to go back and just ask a few questions, or if there's maybe a few different ways that we could go on remedying a specific issue, kind of lay those out and discuss with the customer what path they want to take. But it typically only takes an hour to a week of their time during the first couple of months of the project while we're getting everything imported and assessed and starting the remediation process.
Yeah, I know that's a big question for folks, is how many people, what kind of resources, because the initial deployments were often very resource intensive. But I think that's one of the larger surprises that people have, is that this is more of an arrive and drive program where we do all the migration work, then hand you over the keys for a normal QA process.
Yeah, it's structured very differently than what you would have experienced in your initial implementation, right? Because in that initial implementation, there's a lot of discussions more with the business side to understand requirements, and look at your workflows and do that customization. We don't have to do any of that with a SaaS migration project, right? We're taking what you have and moving it into the cloud. So, especially in the first few months of the project, it's much more driven by the technical resources. The business folks then get involved later in the process to validate the system once we have everything built out.
Right.
Yeah, and this kind of goes into some more detail around once we get more into that build and validation stage. From our side, we're going to make whatever code changes we need to the interfaces, to the reports. Certainly some customers like to be more engaged in that, but they don't have to be. Really where we need the customer engagement is just once we get those interfaces and reports updated, just to help us with a little bit of testing and validation on there. In the integrations, setting up those third-party systems for us to be able to test against. But all the actual updates to the code and interfaces and reports, any system configuration or scripting, our team's going to bear that burden.
Right. And what is a typical, like in all the ones, I think we've done about 28 of these now, and we've got another 10 to 15 in process. Like, tell me, like, how many integrations, Jim, is that usually in reports? Like, give people a feel of kind of the breadth of what the team has done.
Yeah, so typical project might have anywhere from about 4 to 10 integrations. That'd be average. Pima, just they were again highly complex. They had just over 20 integrations, so they were definitely a challenging one. And then on the reporting side, it varies quite a bit. We've had some that are relatively small, maybe 50 reports, all the way up to over 500 reports. So it definitely varies, and however much we need to take on. We plan and scope for that accordingly.
That's great. That's great. Well, keep us honest there, Tracy. Could you tell us about your experience of migrating? I mean, was it all that we promised it to be as far as ease and process?
Actually, it really was. To kind of set the scene, we started this project summer of 2020. So we were in the first phases of a pandemic. We were in the middle of a construction boom here, and we survived. You know, we went into this with a long list of what we called must-have features. In fact, I dug out the memo that we wrote before we even went into this, of all the things that had to transfer over. And, you know, again, that loss of functionality was our greatest fear. One of the things I think that was really important for us, you know, the idea of readiness has come up. We weren't ready. I don't think you're ever ready. We had so much on our plate. Honestly, we probably would have chosen to wait a year. You know, it's always like, oh, I'm not quite ready. But we didn't. We did decide to do a like for like migration. And I think that for us was really important. We didn't take this as an opportunity to redesign things. I mean, things were working pretty well. We were just behind. And so we left our nice to have new features for phase 2, and those we're working on now. But, you know, Excella was great at working with us, though, when we did have things come up. We had a major fee revision in the middle of this. So halfway through the project, we completely redesigned our fee schedule. And we had to implement it. You know, that's outside of our control. But they worked with us on that to get that new coding in there and moved over. And again, we were complicated. We like to be a little bit extra. We had over 20 interfaces. We had 150 reports. We had 33 batch jobs. We had 80 records. All of our scripts were still in 3.0 or needed to be migrated to 3.0 still. None of that had been done. So it was a complicated project, but it went very smoothly for us. Really, we had one delay. I think we had to put off go live for one issue at the end for a few weeks, but otherwise it was a pretty smooth project. It wasn't easy, but it wasn't hard either. And maybe part of that is we always felt like we had the A team with Jim White on our project. And we've said that several times. You know, he was our A team. And they really do a great job of kind of helping you through it. But I think it's pretty telling that, you know, a year later, we're not still feeling the pain of the project. And
Right.
We couldn't say that with either of our prior implementations.
That's great. Mark Maddox asks, so the process from going from master scripts to 2.0 to 3.0 was part of the migration, and that went okay?
Yeah, it did. I mean, Jim can speak more on the rewriting.
Yeah, I'll just say a few words there. Yeah, they were on 2.0. In addition to that, Pima has kind of a unique script architecture where they have a lot of custom libraries that they've built out that then they call from their scripts. So it took us a minute to kind of wrap our head around that architecture, since it's a little unique to Pima County. But you know, once we did, everything translated over nicely. You know, we've got some standard tools that we use to help with that process. So it goes pretty quickly once we got going.
Great. And then Dennis was asked, how long did the migration take from start to finish?
I think we officially kicked off like August, September, and our go live was set for the end of June. We did push it into early August. We had an issue that needed to be resolved that was for us a deal, a deal breaker. It had to be fixed. And it was just a weird, quirky thing. And then it took until the beginning of August to get back on where there was time for everybody to be there for an implementation, because there were other go lives scheduled in between. So that's not too bad.
Yeah, my recollection really was we planned it for 10 months and I think it took 11.
Yeah.
Cool. Great. I'm just looking at the questions here to see if there's anything else. Well, let's answer a couple right now, if you guys don't mind. Brian Dobbins asked, where did the reports end up residing? They have their own business objects enterprise system, and they use with more than just the Ssrs. So where did the reports end up residing? Jim, if you want to take that.
Sure. So the Ssrs reports, those reside on the Ssrs infrastructure on our reporting server. And then Pima also has the enhanced reporting database feature. So they have some processes that run on a daily basis that populate a data warehouse on premise. And then they have additional reporting tools that run against that data warehouse on premise. So, in your situation, that process or something similar would likely apply.
And then can you edit and load your own SSRS reports?
Yes, you can develop your own reports, and then there's a process to have those reviewed and deployed into the SLSAS environment.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mark, for that additional question. I think we got that answered. It's interesting. The Acela went through very much the same process that our customers are going through now. When I joined the company just over 5 years ago, we had our own data center. We had our own hosting data center. And, one of the questions that we kind of asked a bunch is like, why do we have our own data center? There's these little companies named Microsoft and Amazon and Oracle and some others that have a fair bit more resources than we all do to donate or dedicate to their data centers for security, uptime, maintenance, all that kind of great stuff. And so we ran an RFP style process and went out and looked at all the different cloud vendors. And we chose Microsoft not only for their technology stack, but also because they know government so well, and they've been a great partner. And so we spent about a year and a half that Jim was intimately involved with migrating our own product over to Azure. And then we migrated about 253, I think it was, clients that were in our own data center. We migrated them all over to Azure, and Jim and team were instrumental in doing that process and building the tools and the team and the process to do that. So that's the other thing that we tell folks that are considering moving on to the Azure platform is that you've got good company, and that there's a lot of some of our very largest customers have been on Azure for 3 or 4 years now, and it's going pretty well for them. So we went through the same process, and again, Jim and team were the ones that were instrumental in ushering that process through. And so they've taken all of that and the knowledge and the tools to try to make this process really easy as well too. One thing that people do ask me a lot about too, and are really curious about, is the cost of going to the cloud. So again, that's something that we've tried to do to make it really easy for folks and fairly inexpensive. Initial Acela projects, some of them were 6- and 7-figure projects. And what we decided we would do here is not only make it easy for you, but also make it more of a kind of a package / fixed cost. So we've had migrations that the services side of it has been as low as 40 or 50K to do the migration, and we've had some that have decided to take the opportunity to do some of the optimization and make some changes and do things like that But as far as the migration piece, it's been between 50 and 150K. And we go into that, into this process with you, eyes wide open. Jim and team have developed a very simple tool that basically runs an analysis on your environment and tells us everything that is there. And then we come back and we will fix price the cost of that migration for you. So there's no surprises, there's no big cost overruns, there's no worrying that, are we going to have enough budget, or did we allocate enough budget to make the migration? So that's on the services component. So we've tried to make it pretty straightforward. We've tried to make it a arrive and drive type program where, again, Jim mentioned you give us a copy of the database, and we then migrate it for you and hand you keys and logins and ready to go. So let's open and address some of the more questions that folks have come in, and we'll start at the top with Michelle Roulet has asked, and I think, Jim, this is probably a good one for you, is how many jurisdictions have you brought into the cloud platform that you have migrated from Oracle to SQL Server?
I'd say probably about maybe a quarter or a third have been Oracle. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. So that'd probably be about, I think, 8 to 10 customers. And then, of course, our data centers were Oracle. So those,
Right.
250 odd customers that JK mentioned, those were all on Oracle. So we've gotten very, very good at converting from Oracle to SQL Server. So that's definitely not a problem.
What was Pima on?
I believe Pima was on SQL Server.
Was on SQL Server. Great. And then Michelle has another question. Are there any expectations of script version to be on prior to migrating to the cloud?
No, there's really no kind of base level that you need to be in order to start the project. We've gone all the way back to like version 1 scripting with a few customers, so not a concern.
Yeah, I know that's one of the things that we've seen, is that since the on-premise upgrades were so painful, we'll just be honest, as Tracy also mentioned, that it's a really mixed bag of what folks still have on premise. We have folks that we've migrated from overall version 7 to the cloud, and version 9. So there's a lot of folks that are that are still on-prem, that are on much older versions, which again we found is one of the great benefits, is that you get all the security updates and all the different capabilities that Acela has introduced over time. Brian asked, in the past, we've heard stories of folks in the cloud being down for several days. Have those issues been resolved? Excuse me, Jim, do you want to talk about uptime?
Yeah, so since we transitioned our infrastructure over to the Azure cloud, it's made a huge difference in the performance and the uptime statistics of our SaaS offering. We typically run at 4 nines now. We're striving to get to 5, and contractually we're 3 nines. So we don't have extended downtime incidents since we've moved over to Azure.
Yeah. Tracy, I wonder if Pima experienced that. One of the things that I've heard from multiple customers now is that there's a trust issue, and the trust issue is that there's performance and downtime when you're on premise, and sometimes that's old hardware, sometimes that's the implementation. But there was a number of folks have said, well, I'm nervous about moving to the cloud because I'm having downtime issues on premise, and I'd like that fixed before I move to the cloud. I was wondering, was that a concern with Pima at all, or were you in that situation?
Well, we had a couple of times, really just prior to us making this decision, where we had countywide outages, like the contractor cut the fiber optic line and the backup, because apparently they were in the same trench. So good planning there, and things like that. So there was some attractiveness to things being hosted offsite and maybe not being down, even if our internal infrastructure was down. And we didn't have a lot of outages. We certainly had fear. We heard the horror stories of being down for days. We can't afford to be down. Certainly if something's wrong, Excella hears it from us pretty quickly. We scream pretty loud and clear, but we really haven't had outages. You know, we occasionally have something that isn't working the way we thought it should, but we haven't had outages.
That's great. That's great. So Amber Anderson has a follow-up to that, not outages, but asking Tracy, did you lose any functionality that you could do on premise but not in the cloud?
I went through last night our list of must-haves and all of our things. You know, a couple of things, again, they work a little bit differently. You know, we have to go through the ERD for reporting, instead of it, you know, just hitting our warehouse exactly how we had before. But no, we really didn't lose anything. We were pretty set on not losing anything, and it really wasn't an issue. You know, these things were our must-have. I really could not think of anything that we lost. Some things look a little different, but I don't think we lost.
Right, right. And there was there's still some questions coming in the chat that I'll look at as well too. So one from Nanette Montes asks, will the cloud work well with the Sella mobile clients? And says, follow up that also we have interfaces to our PeopleSoft environment that will be needed to show payment data in Excella Civic. Will the cloud environment be able to hook into on-premise systems such as our PeopleSoft environment in order to show data in the cloud? Let's first answer the, does it work well with the mobile clients? Has it for you, Tracy?
Yes, it has. We were using AMO before this. AMO, it worked well for us. It was a little bit rustic in certain places. We have gone completely to the, you know, mobile app now and using it on the phones, and they love it. And it's so much easier on a job site. You know, we had a lot of people that were just leaving the computers in the car and then going back and trying to fill things out. And now that they're able to do things much easier on site. We also break fewer computers on site. It's kind of nice.
That's great. And then it hooks into other on-premise systems like PeopleSoft. I mean, I know Pima had a lot of integration. So either
we had a lot of it. We don't have PeopleSoft, but we do interface with our financial system and a whole lot of other things.
Yeah, just to interject on that point, you know, from a technical perspective, you still got access to all the same APIs, and with the enhanced reporting database, you've still got a real-time refreshed read-only replica of your database that you can connect to if you've got interfaces that need to pull data direct from the database. So, you know, again, we've gotten very good at preserving full functionality on any of those types of interfaces, and certainly financials are a big part of what we do.
Right. And Sunny asks, how much did it cost approximately for the initial analysis if we decided to migrate to the cloud? Well, that's an easy answer, and it's not approximate. It costs you nothing. We don't charge for running the analysis or doing that process. And some accounts have actually done that analysis and learned a whole bunch of things that they actually didn't even know about their environment. But we don't charge for that analysis. And again, we try to walk into this with a completely open dialogue and open book, and then we review those results with you and help you. We even have some tools that can help you put together cost benefit analysis of doing the migration. Leah asked, what did Pima County gain from moving to the cloud? Are you seeing great benefits?
Actually, we are. You know, now we do have access to the latest features and functions. We've got the Construct API, which we didn't have before. We've got Azure SSO. we've been able to kind of redeploy our development resources. Instead of them spending time doing a major upgrade, now they're able to work on other strategic priorities that we have. We are able now to partner both with Accela and with other vendors to implement some new things that we're pretty excited about. So there was a lot of benefit there.
That's great. That's great. And Jim, if you could talk about what are some of the benefits that you've seen other clients get from migrating to the cloud?
Yeah, I mean, certainly, I think we've probably touched on it a couple of times here, but, not having to do the on-premise upgrades is certainly a huge benefit, of moving to SaaS. It just makes it so much easier to stay current on everything. And you don't have to worry about maintaining your infrastructure and updating all that supporting hardware and software, that is necessary to keep Accela up and running. So that's a big one. Improvements in security, Tracy just mentioned moving to Azure SSO really is a nice feature, both in terms of user experience and improving your security posture. And on top of that, behind the scenes, we do annual SOC 2 and PCI audits, HIPAA audit. So typically, a move to SaaS is going to be a significant improvement in your overall security posture of your Accela system. On top of that, a lot of customers, when they're moving over, they're using it as an opportunity to transition to the new UI in a lot of cases, and that typically brings some functional benefits, makes the folks that are using the system a little more productive. It's easier to navigate through the system quickly and quickly see what's relevant on a record. So that's a nice improvement. And another thing, with the SaaS license model being a little bit different, it's a little bit more all-inclusive per seat license. If you do choose to expand how you're utilizing Accela across the enterprise, it makes it much more cost-effective to implement additional solutions on the Accela platform.
That's great. Amber Anderson asks, are there any document upload limitations?
Short answer is no. You can really upload as large a document as you specify as your maximum document size. And there's no hard upper limit on how much storage you can purchase with your account.
Cool. And then Patrick asks, and Jim, if you can grab this one, can you touch on business analytics? Because I know that the data and having greater capability there has been a motivator for some folks to move to the cloud.
Yeah, so as a baseline, we start with kind of your core reporting tools that we already see utilized on premise, so Ssrs and Crystal reports, as well as the ad hoc reporting tool. And then there's a couple of additions that come with the SaaS platform. So the first is Accela Insights, which is essentially an embedded Power BI based data analytics tool. It's really good for doing managerial reporting, kind of charts and graphs to show how things are progressing through the Accela system and those types of reporting and analytics. And then if you want to kind of take it to the next level and do an enterprise type integration with a data warehouse or something like a Power BI, then that's where the enhanced reporting database comes in, which is, like we mentioned before, it's essentially a read-only replica of the full Accela database that you can hook into any enterprise reporting tool and utilize Accela data in that larger enterprise data warehouse type application to really do some advanced analytics. Pima is a great example of that.
Yeah, Tracy, if you want to touch on that if you don't mind touching on that for 1 minute, also about the analytics that you guys are doing and using that right now.
Yeah, so we use the ERD. I think that was one of our biggest concerns, was reporting when we went into this, and having access to the data, because we do a lot of just ad hoc reporting. Somebody asks a question, you have to go in there, pull data to get the answer. And that has worked really well for us. We certainly have plans to go even further with analytics and reporting in the future. We'd like to, get out of the data request business and develop some solutions where customers can ask questions themselves. So we'll see where that takes us.
That's great. That's great. And then Nachendra asks, and I'm pretty sure that we've done this multiple times, but just to confirm that, the cloud clients interface to locally hosted services such as Laserfiche, Doc Repository, Inova Cashier. Any challenges in transitioning these interfaces with SaaS, Jim?
Generally, no, because again, we continue to support all the same API methods. Really, the biggest thing is from your side, just making sure that we get the firewall rules updated so we can have that open, secure communication between your on-premise resources and our environments in the cloud. So once you clear that hurdle, there's generally very little to no modifications that are needed to the interface code in most circumstances. And I should probably also add too that we continue to maintain a high level of performance. That's probably something Tracy can speak to, with more authority than I can. Is it's one thing to maintain the connectivity, but it's also key to maintain the level of performance that you're accustomed to on premise.
Yeah, cool. I would actually say our performance probably in some ways is a little bit better. We get some network slowness, just in the network infrastructure in our building. And so Excella sometimes is less impacted by some of these things than it was beforehand.
That's great. And then if I could direct another one at you, Tracy, Mark asked, what type of electronic document review software does Pima use? And did you change during the upgrade to the cloud?
We use Bluebeam for our electronic document review. We have considered, we used Project Docs in the past. We really like Bluebeam. We're still hoping for a Bluebeam integration between Excella and Bluebeam. And we haven't changed that. As I said, we did like for like, so we didn't put in any new integrations in that. We are open to looking at other solutions for it, but right now we're just, Bluebeam's working well for us.
That's great. That's great. And then Patrick asks, what is the typical turnaround time for a small report change to go into production?
Yeah, so 90% of our report request, upwards of 90%, we complete in a business day or less. Usually if something takes longer, it's because it's kind of an unusual circumstance, something that's more complicated that needs a little more review, or there's some questions and some kind of back and forth on it. But yeah, we can typically turn those around in a business day or less.
Okay. Cool. And then Jim, Cassandra asks, can you confirm the cloud version will work well with other mobile clients, non-Excella mobile clients? And is there anything that we recommend to make the mobile client work more successfully?
Yeah, we've had some customers that have used third-party mobile, City Gov app in particular, and generally those transition very, very easily because they're using the Construct API. So in general, anything using Construct is super easy to migrate. So we haven't had any issues transitioning those over from on-prem to SaaS. It's been really nice.
Cool. Then a couple more, and we'll wrap up Q&A. And so Donna asked to clarify: do we administer our own SSRS instance and security on SQL servers, or did they reside in the cloud on our SaaS environment?
Yeah, so those will reside in the cloud. Excella will administer those resources and maintain those for you. And if you want a report deployed, there's a simple process to submit that request and get that report deployed on the infrastructure.
Oh, that's great. And then let's see, Brian asks, along the line of documents, they integrate Acela back into their on-prem EDMS, and assuming this will still be possible, right?
Yeah, definitely still doable. We've got several customers that we've moved that are using a third-party EDMS. Again, the API is still supported, so it's just a matter of getting that connectivity to your adapter and getting that hooked up to the cloud environment, and then it'll continue to function in essentially the same manner.
Oh, cool. And then another question, good question from Donna. They use XAPO and have created some assets from the map and update the GIS feature classes. Is that still available?
That is still available, yes. We have customers that have migrated over using XAPO, using other architectures like Pima does a nightly batch job, organizes their APO data into Acela from their GIS system. So there's a few different architectures there, but yeah, XAPO is fully supported. All the asset management features, if you're doing that asset synchronization, still work. So yeah, no issues there.
That's great. And then Tracy, a question for you from Leah. What is the biggest adjustment Pima business customers had to do or to make once in the cloud?
Our business customers probably didn't notice that much. There were a few minor changes. I mean, ACA looks the same for them for the most part. Searching was a little different in ACA, so that was a little bit of a challenge for them. We had to make some tweaks for them. So initially they didn't notice a whole lot. In fact, we put some notices up, but it really was, we finished business on Friday and we were up and running Monday morning. It happened and it was pretty seamless for both staff and customers. They just turned it on, they had a new interface, life went forward. So now they're seeing a ton of benefits though, because we're able to implement some new things. As I said, we're getting ready to go live with a new solution with view specs that's going to change our inspection scheduling and our remote inspections. Over 50% of our inspections are done remotely. And so we're going to be able to ditch Skype and do these inspections right through the through an interface right from Acela. And so that's pretty exciting. So they're starting to see a lot of new things. And I think that's what's going to be really exciting for them.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, we found that I hear a common theme of people saying that once you migrate to the cloud and there's this lack of anxiety or even having to deal with the regular Acela upgrade or maintenance and all that kind of stuff, that there was this kind of sigh of relief. And then you were able to move on to other things like, providing different, new features, new capabilities, business things, because all of that other stuff was gone that used to occupy so much time and resources.
Yeah. For us, that's been true. We're, we've been working on a new financial, gateway with the bank. We've been working on, we're about to start a big on-base integration. People asked about that. We're doing this new inspection platform. We've got plans to go ahead and do a lot of enhanced customer facing integrations and things this next year. So
that's great.
We're kind of focused on that other stuff.
That's great. That's great. People must be a lot happier doing that work as well too, versus the other. Dennis asks, and Jim, I think this is for you. As more jurisdictions start migrating, do you anticipate having enough personnel to accommodate, or will it be handled more of a first come, first serve basis?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly have scaled up the program as we've started to bring more customers over. So yeah, I don't anticipate that being a problem. I mean, we're certainly busy, and I think we'll stay that way. But yeah, if you're interested in coming over, you're still going to have, you know, that kind of white glove type of experience as you move into the cloud with us.
Cool. Have we ever worked with Routeware? I'm not familiar with Routeware. Are you, Jim?
Yeah, I don't know that we've worked with that one specifically off the top of my head.
Okay, and then Donna asks, is the GIS update only nightly?
Actually, no, it's not, is it, Tracy?
It is not. We have a magic button from our GIS. Since those folks aren't here, we can call it what we'd like to call it, which is our magic button. So we do all of our addressing in GIS, and we have an Excel update button that we can push, and it actually moves data over from the GIS real time into Excel. And then we also have a nightly batch that does all of our overlays, all of our parcel updates, all of those things, and catches anything addressing wise that we didn't do the button on, and it moves that APO data over, and, you know, everything every night.
How about the other direction? Can you go from Acela to GIS in the same way?
We don't have a lot that's going back that way. That's part of phase 2. We have a lot coming in, but not a lot coming out.
Right. Cool. All right. Well, I think that's a couple of last ones. Is Cloud ACA mobile responsive? Nachendra asks.
Yeah, the current version of ACA, we've got a responsive wrapper that we typically deploy with it. So yeah, it'll display nicely on mobile devices.
Cool. All right. And then last one, was there are there any examples of what looks different apart from reporting?
Well, I think, you know, to a certain extent that'll kind of depend on what version you're coming from. You know, there's certainly been UI enhancements to both the back office primarily, but also ACA. And, you know, if you're using one of the older mobile apps versus Acela Mobile, you know, that's certainly a significant change as well. Though, you know, that's the big things is just some of the updates to the, particularly too, if you're coming from V360, in some cases, that's a significant change for the back office users.
Cool. All right. Well, that is the end of all of our questions. If you have any further questions or something that we didn't fully address, please, you know, reach out to your rep or send us an email. A little shameless plug for Accelerate 2022 again. You know, one of the big things that people really seem to like a lot about Accelerate is all of the training. So we have, you know, over 50 breakout and training sessions, and we're bringing in the always popular Ask an Expert, where quite a few folks will be on hand there in booths that will be able to help answer your questions and provide guidance. And as of course, we have the great main stage sessions and some customer appreciation evenings and Trendsetter Awards. And then also all of Acela's partners, quite a few partners are going to be there as well too. So with that, if we could bring up the final poll question. What's next? So this helps us understand how to follow up with you, and it's a readiness assessment or have a conversation with Jim. Jim's cat often makes a guest appearance in those conversations, so you can get to meet Jim's cat as well, or if you have what you need right now. But again, we're happy to answer any questions, have follow-up discussions, you know, to talk through the assessment, its results, how to run it. And Jim, what's that usually takes our customers, what, about 40 minutes, 45 minutes to run the assessment?
Yeah, it's essentially an SSRS report that you deploy and run. It typically doesn't take an hour to go through that process. And then once we have the result, we like to sit down and review that with you, which, you know, that conversation usually takes anywhere from about half hour to an hour to go through the results with you. So, you know, it's not a big commitment of time, and you'll definitely learn some things about your system.
Cool. All right. Well, with that, I'd like to thank all of you for joining us today. Really appreciate you being online. There will be a recorded version of this and segments of this presentation available for you. And then also, I'd like very much to thank Jim for sharing his knowledge. And Tracy, thank you very much for joining us and sharing your experiences and your results. It's nothing is better than hearing it from somebody who's been through the process and answer everyone's questions. So thank you, Tracy, for joining us.
Welcome.
Great. All right. Thanks, everybody. And with that, we are going to end the webinar. Have a terrific afternoon, rest of your day.